Must there be such a dark and serious DC extended universe? There is. Hello and welcome back. Yes, it's been a while since I've updated. College and work have been insane lately, and I never really wanted these videos to just be me talking, but vague copyright laws make me paranoid. But things are starting to clear up a little bit, so I'm gonna try to make more videos. As you may or may not know, Man of Steel was my first review on this channel, and needless to say, it was not a favorable review. But after being unimpressed by Man of Steel, I did try to keep in mind that The Dark Knight was a big improvement on Batman Begins. And I couldn't help but wonder if the same principle applied to the extended DC universe. What if Man of Steel was just setting us up for an awesome sequel that would take us all by surprise? Well, it didn't. Now I have said that in spite of its dark, boring, and unnecessarily serious tone, Man of Steel did have some good things about it. It had visually awe-inspiring action scenes, and it hinted at what a great modern DC movie could be like, even if it fell short. Well, to summarize, Batman vs. Superman took everything I thought about Man of Steel, and with few exceptions, multiplied those elements. In other words, I have strong mixed feelings about this movie. It had some good qualities buried under every modern DC flaw you'd expect it to have. Let's go into more detail. The film begins with a very brief recap of the story of Bruce Wayne, aka Batman, and I'm glad it was brief. This is the third Batman film continuity reboot, and we don't need to see yet another lengthy, detailed explanation as to how he became Batman. Batman Begins had enough of that for 4 reboots. As Bruce Wayne grows up to be Batman, we are shown the battle between Zod and Superman from his point of view while he's in Metropolis as Bruce Wayne. The destruction is heavy, sudden, inescapable, and fatal. Thousands, including one of Bruce's friends, die. This causes Bruce to despise Superman, and he's not alone. In the media, Superman is seen as a controversial figure. Some see him as a symbol of hope, but most feel that he has too much power, and obviously isn't careful enough. But when Superman hears of Batman's vigilante work in Gotham City, he attempts to silence him as Clark Kent, the reporter. But when a chunk of kryptonite washes up on the shores of the Indian Ocean, Lex Luthor attempts to gain permission to use it as a deterrent against Kryptonians. The plot is kind of all over the place. But ultimately, at some point, Batman and Superman fight. The film moves very slowly. There's a lot of build-up and subplots. I can't think of any problems really, other than Luthor. Now that I think about it, I'm not really sure what his motivations were for doing anything he did. He was just kind of the bad guy who tried to destroy the good guys. This didn't occur to me until I thought about it later. While watching the movie, I got so caught up in the mechanics of his plan that I didn't realize I had no idea what he was trying to accomplish. Maybe I'll understand if I watch it again, I don't know. The writing was okay, I guess. As with Man of Steel, people talked more about the concepts being addressed than anything they would say in real life. I made a decision not to get hung up on, quote, realistic dialogue and how unrealistic it is. It's theatrics. People didn't really talk like they were from Shakespeare plays during Shakespeare's time. In the case of, quote, serious superhero movies, I see it kind of the same way. I'm not a Nolan fan because I think his movies are realistic. I'm a fan of his theatrical, over-the-top directing style. I don't know if it's on purpose or not, but that's how I see it. Nobody says, you either die a hero or live long enough to see yourself become the villain at a dinner party, but it's just so epic. Of course, Nolan has less involvement with Batman vs. Superman than he did with Man of Steel and the Batman trilogy, so let's stay on topic. The other point I wanted to make about the writing, in terms of realism, is that while people might not be so poetic about it, I do think that if Superman flew down from the sky in real life, people might actually ask some of the same questions they asked in this movie. Just Superman's very existence made people raise a lot of heavy questions. I can believe that these are some of the questions people would ask if powerful beings from other planets rained down to do hero work. I give the movie points for touching on these concepts, but I'm taking them away for dwelling on them. A superhero movie can be thought-provoking and fun at the same time, which is one of the many reasons I prefer Marvel. Were the characters good? They were an improvement. I do think I was a little hard on Amy Adams in my last review. She played the part that was given to her well in both cases. And Lois Lane's blandness is really just a symptom of the general blandness surrounding the entire movie. Over the course of the film, Superman went from being vilified to actually being kind of sympathetic. And either extreme is more than I can say for Man of Steel. As for Ben Affleck's take on Batman, well, I think we worried too much. He was a believable Batman. He played a good, dark, jaded Batman. In this continuity, Bruce Wayne has been Batman for 20 years already. He's seen heroic figures fall, and he's even gotten to the point where he's not afraid to kill people. He's a dark Batman, and that's saying something. One of the things I can say about this movie is that it respected our knowledge of the various Batman storylines. Bruce Wayne only mentions the thing about fallen heroes once, but that tells us all we need to know, and they don't feel the need to elaborate. We've seen lots of different Batmans, and there's no need for a recap. The themes relevant to Batman were brought into this movie effectively. Now, this isn't a spoiler because we've seen this in the trailers, but Wonder Woman is in this movie too. I'm gonna be honest, she was so cool. Her persona as Diana Prince was a regular character, and the build-up to her superhero identity was well-paced and didn't seem like it was out of nowhere. They also used this to hint at other DC heroes and a bigger DC universe in ways that were subtle, but actually gave me hope for the Justice League movie. Wonder Woman's role in this film's climax was just plain cool. She may have been the best part of this movie, and that's more than I thought I'd ever say about Wonder Woman. The pacing of this movie was the worst part. It was really, really slow. If it had had some bigger action scenes in the middle, like Man of Steel, that might have helped, but all the action was clustered in at the end. There was enough, but by the time we got there, I was just so tired. And Batman fighting Superman was only a little bit of it. Most of it had the heroes dealing with another threat that I won't spoil. There were way too many subplots, and there was way too much exposition. I like the typical DC movie length. I like that they give themselves time to give the film's depth thoughtfully paced with the action. But it just wasn't used well in Batman vs. Superman. It dragged out too long. I wanted to be much less tired than I was during this film's climax. And it was an exciting climax. As with Man of Steel, the special effects were jaw-dropping. The CGI mixed with the actors was very comic bookish, large-scaled, and thrilling to watch. The score was typical Hans Zimmer, blurring the line between sophisticated and bland. It worked, but it all contributed to the movie's dark tone along with the writing, the way it was filmed, the lighting, and just the general dark atmosphere. This is literally the darkest superhero movie I've ever seen. As in, like, it needed brighter lights. But it was dark in every other sense of the word too. It was so bleak, so bland, and so serious. There were times where I actually wished I was watching Man of Steel. Man of Steel took itself too seriously in a way that could be enjoyed ironically. Batman vs. Superman was just boring. Sound-wise, it was very loud. Like, really loud. It blurred that line between irritation and the action movie loudness equivalent to a concert. In the end, I ended up liking it, but I can totally understand why other people wouldn't. All in all, I just don't see why these movies have to be so dark. I'd say they were trying to capitalize the popularity of the Nolan Batman trilogy, but those feel like rainbows and unicorns compared to the Justice League Extended Universe. The Batman trilogy dealt with dark concepts, but they didn't go over the top trying to convince us they were dark. They let those elements speak for themselves. Batman vs. Superman was just trying too hard. I've always felt like DC was dark. Even when my only experience was the 90s cartoons, I felt like Marvel was something campy and fun, and even the serious moments weren't really serious at all. Whereas DC, it felt, quote, sophisticated, to a point where I felt like if I was enjoying myself, I was watching it wrong. Christopher Nolan didn't bring something new to the table. He multiplied what was already there. But even his non-superhero movies aren't this dark. The Prestige was a fun movie about magicians compared to this.
Inception is a cool movie about dreams. That's it, that's the whole thought. In spite of everything I said, this movie was still too dark. It could lose 80% of the persistently serious tone and still feel, quote, important enough to live up to the hype. DC is trying way too hard to make people in costumes seem serious and important. It's getting out of control. Dark doesn't always equal better. DC has an addiction. But there were still good things about this movie. It complemented Man of Steel really well by resolving some of the issues that I didn't even think they had thought about. Wonder Woman was cool. The movie hinted at other DC heroes in a way that actually made me optimistic about the future. If they just tone down the seriousness, and they can afford to without being as silly and colorful as Marvel, then the DC Extended Universe may actually be able to compete with the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
All things considered, I enjoyed Man of Steel more than I enjoyed Batman vs. Superman. But there was a well thought out story buried under mounds and mounds of darkness and emptiness. Bad metaphor. So to make sense of my mixed feelings, I have decided to give Batman vs. Superman the completely average rating of 5 out of 10. Batman vs. Superman is rated PG-13 for loud, destructive, scary action sequences, scary images, a scene of partial nudity, and deep, crushing despair. If you're looking for something to distract you from life's problems, or for a way to introduce your toddler to superheroes, stay away from this movie. On the other hand, if you know what you're in for, I'd actually recommend it. Even if you hate it, you should watch it just to have an opinion on it. I'm interested in other people's opinions on this movie, especially since I can't seem to find my own. Whether you love or hate this movie, it's hard to come away from it without thinking about it a lot. Just make sure you get a good night's sleep and don't have to go to the bathroom before you see it. And that's Batman vs. Superman. Thank you so much for watching, even though I went so long without updating. And if you're tired of movie reviews, which is unlikely because I haven't made that many, you can watch Matey's reviews of cartoons and Josh's reviews of video games. And don't forget, you can now find the Sentient Sock Puppets on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. See ya!